Thank you for being here. Congratulations on this film. It's third time I've seen it, actually. I want to start by asking you guys when this journey started, which I believe is a long time ago, and how it started.
Yeah, late 2006, pre-YouTube. It was originally going to be a sequence of tour films on James's third album, War Stories, and it evolved.
Quite a lot.
A little bit. Yeah. Well, it was a kind of weird thing because it was my ex-wife who's in the movie, and she had this knack of sort of coming up with crazy ideas, and they sounded great, but it was kind of like, okay, don't worry, yeah, we'll just maybe start here and we'll get there. And then suddenly we talked about doing these tour films, and we were doing it, and she was on the road with me, and I was presented with a trailer for this documentary, and it was meant to be for investment only, and somehow with Lorna, it ended up online, and there was a documentary being made.
Yeah,
so
it
that's
leaked.
how it kind of happened.
It
Yeah,
leaked,
or maybe you leaked it.
But,
Anyway,
but
yeah.
I didn't leak. That was Surrender All. That was not me.
Was there a point, or was there an event, or was there a reason why it went from being these tour diaries to going, actually, there's a bigger story to be told
To
here?
be honest, I remember when we first met James, and Moax was a bit of a dirty word then. And it was like, you know, that what had happened was quite raw still. So I just started reading about it, and whilst Lorna was off on tour with James and filming, and I just thought that there was a really interesting story about that label that no one had ever really gone into depth on in film or TV. So I thought that's really where we should start here. And then what we're doing now is like after. And beyond that, I don't think we really had any idea of what it was going to be, and it took years and years. And like I've said before, we've had footage dropped into this film, like almost every month. It's had a life. You know, we changed it up until we changed the cut like March, and then so I think so it's evolved. We've never had all of our footage in one place at one time.
Wow.
It's gradually been acquired through interviews and people telling us about footage, and it's been a very gradual process. I've never had the luxury of having all the footage there and going, right, what should we make? You know, it's very much a film that's kind of grown.
And how easy was it to kind of decide on that narrative that you wanted to tell? Because it's a film about a lot of things, I think, especially after seeing it more than once. You peel back layers and stuff from it. Was it easy when you kind of trying to work out the narrative and how you wanted to navigate your way through the story?
I always knew that I wanted like science fiction to kind of, and James' story to embody the record industry. In a subliminal way, in a subtle way, that it's like his trajectory embodies the record industry, and I thought that would make it a bigger story. And I thought where science fiction was in the history of the music business, 1998, the highest, the 2.5 billion CD sales that year. It was the biggest year for physical product ever, and after that it just dropped off a cliff. And I just thought this is too perfect. Thought embodies what the record industry is and the way the record industry collapsed, and then how it kind of gradually rebuilt itself, and it all seemed to fit. So that was always a plan. And then when my editor came on board, he had great ideas about how we were going to structure it and kind of treat the footage like Shadow and James would treat sampling. So that was, once we had those two ideas together, I think that's where it kind of came from.
And that's quite interesting as well, because talking about sampling, the footage that you have particular of you two is you both filming each other, which, the amount of footage that's in the film that you filmed as well. So it's you telling your story to a point as well. Do you feel that?
It's maybe in retrospect. I mean, it was all sort of private at the time.
No one's supposed to see it.
I don't know. It's weird because sort of look back now, and yeah, I did film everything that we were fortunate. I was going to Japan a lot. We were me and a lot of the people that I was working with. We were really into that era of technology, and so there was lots of great video cameras coming out in Japan. He'd always come back from Japan with some cool video camera and film stuff, or take crazy Polaroids or whatever, and I suppose after over 25 years it kind of amassed to part of what you see here, But I've always been into documenting things.
Yeah.
I think for me, having a document, whether you see the madness of my storage and stuff like that in this film, I've always just wanted to document things. I'm very into history.
Do you think you were doing that as well because you knew that there would be a story to tell? Or you hoped there would be a story to tell?
I don't know. I mean, not really. It was just something I just wanted to capture everything I possibly could, And I think that there was talks of doing films before this film came into fruition earlier on, but it was never. I don't know if I ever think about things in that way. It's just sort of living in the moment, which I think why you can see sometimes it's the highs and the lows, because it's very much about being in the moment, you know.
We were talking earlier about how you came across a lot of the archive footage, and a lot of it's from James, some of it in Tupperware boxes.
The Tupperware box, yeah. 2009, James he was like searching around in the studio and was like, oh yeah, I think there's something on there, and it was this Tupperware box. It was about this big, and it was just like a messy box full of old tape formats, like several different formats. We had to buy a player off eBay just to be able to play some of it, because we didn't even know what it was, and work out a way of digitizing it, because no professional digitization existed for this stuff, because it was like consumer stuff from like the early 90s. And it was on there we found some of the best stuff of you in Rare Records, digging with Shadow for records, and then also all of the stuff of Tom York not in Skywalker Ranch, right?
Yeah.
It's not Skywalker.
It was near Skywalker Ranch. Yeah.
There's a good Star Wars fact, though, isn't there?
Yeah,
You've got to share the Star Wars. This is an amazing Star Wars fact.
So the reason that he thinks it's in Skywalker Ranch is that me and Shadow were invited to go to Skywalker Ranch because on science fiction a lot of the technical crew there at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, were very into MOACs, and we put out science fiction, and if you're a real train spotter, there is a moment on science fiction where Boba Fett's vocal is sampled. And it's from the 1977 holiday special of Star Wars. It's very train spotty, but it's important if you're a Star Wars fan, which I was at the time. And we were also there because Josh and I had been talking to Lucasfilm about him being involved in the first prequel. And they were basically, a lot of friends of mine, we're all kind of into Star Wars, whether it was Bathing Ape or lots of musicians, things like Jedi Knights, for instance, which are an electro band at the time. They all got sued really badly. I got flown out, and they were like, it's amazing you sampled it, and we're going to fly you over, and do you want to come to George Lucas's office? And Radiohead happened to be playing the next day, so we booked a studio which was across the valley from Skywalker Ranch. But
no one tell Tom York it isn't Skywalker
yeah,
Ranch.
yeah.
Let him
Sorry,
just
Tom,
think
I've
it's
blown
Skywalker
it.
Ranch.
But yeah, no, it was kind of amazing to be able to go and see this archive, and also be the fact that they were like, so cool you sampled it, whereas all my mates were getting destroyed at the time.
I think this sort of Star Wars theme is prevalent throughout the whole sort of story, because if you look at the act structure, it's 3 acts. And it's kind of like a boy leaves his home, goes to the big town, the battle of the dark side and the light side, and the force of the music.
The force is hip hop.
And so Matt sort of tuned into that pretty quickly, And there's even other things in there where we licensed Holst, the planets, and somebody saw it and said, oh, you've got Star Wars soundtrack, you'll never get that license. Little did they know we'd already licensed it, and it was Holst which inspired John Williams to write the Star Wars music. We got that for like 130 quid. So we got the same notes of Holst. He found it.
When it came to the music in the film, where did you start with that? Because, I mean,
I tried to break it down by getting an iPod Touch. I bought like every CD I could find of MOACs on eBay, cheap as I could, so I kind of had the whole back catalogue as best I could, and then I just transferred it to an iPod Touch. So I just tried to listen to it. And then Alec, my editor, came on board and had really good ideas, and he knew a lot of the records better than me in some ways, so he suggested great ideas. And then there was that combination of tracks. So originally it was like 70 tracks, and then we're like, we can no way afford 70 tracks. So we're like, okay, can we afford 60 tracks? We're like, no, we don't have enough money for 60 tracks. It just came down
to 55.
To 55. But it was, and to be fair, we got a lot of support from James and everyone who's worked with him and over the years. And some people said just, nope, I'm not being in the dock, and I'm not clearing the music. So we had to just cut them out. So most people, 90% of people were really
one of the
supportive.
tracks had like 12 people had to say yes. If one of them says no, you can't use it. And on one of them, David Bowie, I think, owns 1.8% that you gave him.
Yeah.
And we had to sort of then sort of speak to his estate, and they were very gracious and allowed us to use it. It wasn't even worth the invoice. It wasn't even worth the invoice it was printed on. It was like 25 quid.
Wow.
Something like that,
we're going to leave here and it's going to get served with loads of Ritz when we leave here, because it's all on Facebook Live. So
it's all signed. I have no problem. It's all signed.
Yeah. I don't know if the samples are clear. Though.
That's your problem.
James, not to allow this film to be made, but to relinquish control to, I guess, did you relinquish control to let these guys tell the story the way they wanted to make it, tell it?
Yeah, I did in the sense that I was creatively involved, but I had to kind of think about what this was going to be, and it went in a certain direction, and you know, I found that quite hard at times. But I wanted to step back and think about, you know, I've always had this wrestle of dealing with the art side and also trying to convince artists to do things. And so I was sort of sitting there thinking, well, if it's what I was going to do, it's not going to be what this is, and maybe it might be the right thing to let it be what it's meant this is going to be. And my manager, he manages Nick Cave, and had been doing a lot of documentaries with Nick, and was kind of like, look, I think you need to step back and, you know, allow something to be organic and to a degree, have a truth, because we live in a world where we don't see a lot of truth in especially in the way that we can manipulate and change very easily. And I think that I just sort of took a deep breath and thought, okay, let's see where it goes. And I think definitely in the last couple of years, I've sort of, there's a lot of it in the documentary that I really love. But seeing yourself in any way is difficult, I think, for most people. You know, just getting up in the morning and looking yourself in the mirror can be enough. But seeing yourself on a cinema screen like that is slightly, you know, it's a little bit like, okay, really? But I just felt in definitely in the last couple of years, because it's been such a long process, that I feel that the way the world has changed and what we're talking about right now, and you know, you have to be honest, and I've dealt with a lot of things with anxiety and addiction, and also, you know, it was a very different industry. It was a very, very male-led industry. It was a very bullyish industry. I was very young. I wasn't very protected. I really wasn't. And whilst that was amazing experience, it also, you know, as you see, it has its consequences. But so in the last couple of years, I felt a lot more at ease as what the dialogue is going on within the entertainment industry per se. And actually, in a weird way, what you know, I've lost a lot of friends in the last 10 years due to mental illness and addiction and things. And I realised that, you know what, I'm here and I'm alive, and I'm proud of the creativity that the people that I've been part of and worked with in the creativity. And maybe this story is important to show so that people can understand what it can be like to have these great dreams, but sometimes those dreams can be pulled from under your feet and fucked with, and you're not looked after. And I hope that in you know, there's the creativity on one side, but also the human side is that, you know, you need to look after and love people and not take advantage. And I was very much taken advantage of, and I didn't understand. And once the snowball started, it didn't stop for a long time. And so I hope that, especially with younger people that see this film, they can see that you can achieve your dreams, but be careful what you ask for, what you wish for, and be mindful of how you get there, you know.
What would you tell your 14-year-old self?
Slow the fuck down. I think you know, just breathe and step back, and you don't have to do it all in 5 minutes. But when you're young and you know, you don't think of time in that way. I wanted to do everything I possibly could, and believe me, whilst there are downs, I had a fucking good time. Believe me, there's a lot of good times, and I experienced, and I was somebody that wanted to go and see things that, you know, when I started, you know, and I'm sure many people of my age would understand that, you know, the choices that you had were very black and white, and then you had this little thing which was like, you could go down the rabbit hole, the record business, you know, it was Alice in Wonderland, and that was very exciting. I think that you know, it's about how you how you're supported. And I
Yeah.
think you just got to be very careful about who you put your trust in at times.
It physically looked like you went down a rabbit hole in that scene where you're in the record
Yes, yeah,
place with
sure.
Shadow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing
Yeah,
footage,
yeah.
which you got from Shadow, is that right?
No,
that
that
was-
was in the Tupperware
Was
box.
it was in the Tupperware box. Has he seen the film?
Yeah, Shadow's seen it. Yeah.
What do you think?
He said I don't sure he won't mind me saying this. He said I almost didn't want to watch this film, but I found myself after half an hour really rooting for James's struggle. So I think he really admires what we've done.
Well, friendship's a big theme in the film as well, and the great kind of, you talk about kind of what you lost along the way, and you lost friendships as well along the way, and that's another human side to it, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did, and some of those friendships have been repaired, and some of them haven't. There's also a lot of people that aren't in this film that were there from day one, and you didn't choose to put them in there, so that's on you.
I can't make the Wikipedia page of Uncle. I'd need like a series.
That's a trilogy.
Yeah, that's episode 2.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we can laugh about it. No, there's been a lot of sadness in that way. But you know what? It's rock and roll, and unfortunately, I'm not the only one that's been there through that too.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time together. I think that really Mowax was like a band, and the story goes beyond that. But if you want to focus on the Mowax period, it's like great bands, great things don't last forever generally, and they have incredible moments, and it's usually a kind of 7 to 8 year moment, and that's what it was, and it was incredible. But unfortunately, things change and life moves on, and it's when you're spending such an intense amount of time together, you're trying to also go against a lot of things, because we can look at this documentary and go, it's so cool, and wow, wasn't it amazing then? But you know what? It was always a struggle. It was always something that people didn't understand what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And it's only really now that people kind of understand, and it's the industry is now very much based on the ideas of what I had and other people similar to me had, where it was a universe, collaboration, making toys, and working in Japan, and a universal kind of aesthetic where it was more than just music, was not supported, and so it's like so it was always quite difficult in that respect. Now I think I can step back and go, wow, now sort of people kind of get it, and it's part of modern creative culture.
How many hours of footage did you have to
We've worked out about 700, but I couldn't say it might be 800. It might be 650. I don't know.
It took about, I think, just about 6 months for Alec, our editor, when he came on board, out of a 2.5 year process to just watch the footage before he even started editing. So that's all got to be watched. And thankfully, these guys are quite methodical, and they went through it all and
It's
tried
quite
to.
scary that somebody's watched that much shit.
Yeah, well,
Technically,
he's probably the expert. But
700 hours of you, James?
I should say,
It's a lot.
dread to think what is
But
this?
this is where I think like the 12-year period in terms of from conception from back in 2006 to where we are now, that's where it's really benefited the project, because we technically world premiered this in South by Southwest in 2016, and at that point in time Joshua Home wasn't in the film.
Pablo wasn't in the film.
Pablo was, yeah.
And Ken wasn't in the film.
Yeah,
Really?
there's a few. So it's evolved since then, because we kind of got a bit of heat from that. Then it opened up other doorways, and other people came forward and said, yes, you found some more archive, which was great. And then that came in. So straight away, a new version of the film was sort of happening whilst that one was screening there.
So we screened a rough cut at a major film festival. It's crazy. And it's like 2 hours, 7 minutes, like 20 minutes longer than this. It wasn't as good as this cut. And then the cut that you see here has more footage in it, and it's shorter. So we went through another sort of 6-8 months of editing after South by Southwest. We like the MTV footage when Shadow and James are side by side. We found that. We put that in. Lots of things that's changed.
Oh yeah, the bit where the Darth Vader helmet. I don't know if everybody liked that bit. We found that afterwards, So.
In a 2-hour Channel 4 late night documentary, and the only thing in it of James is you turn up as Darth Vader and you leave, and you're not in it. It's so weird.
I love the idea of it
Star
almost like
Wars again.
constantly evolving.
That was with Rankin, actually.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a Dazed and Confused. They took over Channel 4.
Oh, wow. But I love the idea of the film almost like constantly evolving as more kind of archive keeps.
But I think that was
coming in.
when you talk about my creative process within it, because there were things that were important to me that weren't in there, and it wasn't. And I didn't have the problem necessarily, even though it's hard to watch, but taking a step back of warts and all. But I had a problem with certain things where it's like, I don't think this is appropriate and necessary. But also there were things to me that were important, that my life is not just based on MOAX or science fiction or whatever. And I think that it was very important for me that people like Josh and Nathan Coley and people like that were in the film, because they saw that those experiences, those exchanges were very different from the world that you were
And that was one of the best things about working with James, is that one of the most stressful days of my life, we had 20th Century Fox screening room in Soho. We booked it, and we were just like, it was just me and Mac and James, his manager, to show him the first cut. It was so stressful. I was like, oh my God, what's he going to think?
You found it stressful.
Yeah. But then off the back of that, you'd expect someone to walk out and effing blind, but James walked out and went, I think you need this person and this person and this person, and I've got a tape of this, and we can make it better. So it was really positive.
And he was even like, change that photograph because I've got a better one. And there's another one. So it was more like
But
really
it wasn't,
good feedback.
I'm not sounding silly, but it wasn't a vanity thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it, it is hard, and I, at times, but I didn't want to make something which was kind of fluffy, and
Yeah.
I wanted something which was raw. I like Hearts of Darkness. I like, Dig and Metallica. I don't think that's the story, and I think, I think it was important that there were certain things that needed to be articulated by certain people that maybe weren't necessarily at that time obvious, or things had moved on.
Nathan Coley, I
me.
just never would have known.
Yeah.
And he was one of the most sort of articulate and insightful voices in the film in the end.
I think he brings up a really good point as well, in terms of like in our film industry, you have like the story originator is awarded an Oscar, along with the writer who writes the script or the idea person. They all get awarded. Whereas, and he sort of describes it perfectly in terms of his architect. Does he have to lay the bricks? And in the music industry, suddenly if you come up with an idea, but you don't necessarily write the music, why is that not acknowledged?
Yeah.
Whereas in ours, it's just automatically accepted.
Yeah,
So
a
to me,
director-
that was always an interesting.
Exactly.
sort of
I
subject.
only do what James does in film form. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
James instructs multiple people to do the thing and build the thing he wants.
Yeah.
It's the same as Scorsese or...
It's all right now. That's how the whole music industry works now.